The morning fog clung to San Francisco streets as Julia Hayes hurried toward the prestigious Westwood Music Academy. Her simple gray cardigan and modest dress set her apart from the fashion-forward students crowding the sidewalk. Julia clutched her worn leather notebook filled with musical compositions. At 33, she'd built a modest career writing arrangements for local orchestras. Though her work was played by others, few knew her name. That's how she preferred it. Can you believe she called Taylor Fisher's Carnegie performance technically perfect but soulless? One student whispered about Constance Wellington, the most feared critic on the West Coast. His career practically ended overnight. Julia swallowed hard. Inside the building, she signed in for the Composition and Performance Connection seminar. Her publisher had been blunt. Your compositions are technically brilliant, Julia, but they lack something. An understanding of what performers need. What he didn't know was that Julia had held an instrument. For 15 years, she'd poured her soul into the violin, been called gifted, exceptional. But when it came to performing for others, paralyzing anxiety took over. After a disastrous audition at Juilliard, she'd locked her violin away and turned to composition. Room 342 was Westwood's crown jewel, a miniature concert hall with tiered seating. Julia slipped into the back row, determined to remain invisible. At precisely 10 a.m., Constance Wellington made her entrance. At 72, she carried herself with the authority of someone who had made and broken musical careers with the stroke of her pen. "I don't believe in coddling talent," Constance said, her voice crisp. "The music world isn't kind. Why should I be?" Several students performed, receiving cutting critiques. During a pause, Constance's gaze traveled to the back rows. "You there, in the gray cardigan. Come down here." Julia froze. "I'm just observing. Everyone participates in my master class," Constance said. "Unless you feel you have nothing to contribute." Julia reluctantly descended. "I'm Julia Hayes. I'm a composer. Do you play any instruments?" "I used to." Constance's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yet you feel qualified to write music for performers." She opened a violin case. "Indulge us. Play something." Julia stared at the instrument. 8 years since she'd held a violin. "I'm sure you can manage a simple scale." Constance pressed, her tone dripping with condescension. With trembling hands, Julia accepted the violin. Constance retreated to her chair, anticipating disaster. "Whenever you're ready, Miss Hayes." Julia positioned the violin under her chin. She could play a simple scale and escape with minimal embarrassment. Or she could show them who she really was. Julia closed her eyes, found her breath, and made her choice. She played the first note, a perfect resonant G that silenced the whispers instantly. The opening notes of Bach's Chaconne from Partita No. 2 filled the room. One of the most technically challenging pieces in the violin repertoire. Constance's eyes widened. She had expected fumbling, not this. As Julia continued, all the emotion she'd bottled up for years flowed through her fingers. The room disappeared. There was only Julia and the violin speaking after a long silence. The concert master leaned forward, stunned. Constance sat motionless, her smug smile vanished. Julia infused the piece with an almost spiritual quality. She wasn't just playing notes. She was telling a story of loss, rediscovery, and transcendence. The final chord resonated through the hall. Complete silence. Then the concert master rose to his feet, clapping with unrestrained enthusiasm. The ovation built to thunderous levels. Through it all, Constance remained seated, speechless. Julia lowered the violin. Her hands weren't shaking. The paralyzing anxiety had transformed into focused intensity. Looking at Constance, Julia offered a small smile. "Sometimes we need to be pushed to remember who we truly are." When the applause subsided, Constance stood slowly. "That was a revelation," she said. "Where did you study?" "Curtis Institute." "Before I stopped performing." "Why did you stop?" "Performance anxiety." During my Juilliard audition, I froze completely. Constance's expression softened. "So you turned to composition." Julia nodded. "I never stopped loving music. I just found a different way to express it." Constance examined Julia's notebook. "These are exceptional." She handed Julia a business card. "The San Francisco Chamber Orchestra needs a composer in residence. The position also requires occasional performance. Talent like yours shouldn't remain in the shadows." 3 months later, Julia Hayes stood center stage at the Herbst Theater, violin in hand. Behind her, The San Francisco Chamber Orchestra waited. In the front row, Constance Wellington watched intently. The piece they were about to perform, Emergence, was Julia's own composition. As Julia raised her bow, she recalled the moment that had changed everything. The anxiety hadn't disappeared completely, but it had transformed into something manageable. She began to play, leading the orchestra through her musical story of fear, hiding, and ultimately reclamation. Her music spoke directly to the audience. It's never too late to become who you really are.